you feel about a 4-day work week? Story 1 life would be that much better. I would have somewhere around 50 extra days a year to do all the yard work and home projects that I don't want to spend all weekend doing. Story 2, my company switched to 4 10-hour days. We are diesel technicians and work 7 to 530. Half of us work Monday through Thursday, and the other half work Tuesday through Friday. We have did this for over 2 years, and we all love it. It is so nice to have a 3-day weekend every week. Another thing about it that is nice is if you doctor's appointment or something, I can make it on a Monday and don't have to miss any work. Plus, I forgot to mention having a 2-month, this helps out a ton. More time for me to be with my wife and daughter. And if there's a lot to do, I can just come in on Monday and boom, 10 hours of overtime. Story 3, my employer gives us every other Friday off. We work 80 hours over 9 days, Monday to Friday. MTH, it's really helpful to have those Fridays to schedule appointments. And I have less desire to burn PTO throughout the year just to take a much-needed Friday off through the end of October. I had only used 5 PTO hours for the year, mostly for doctor's visits. The only real downside is that on the Fridays that we do work, nobody wants to do anything. Story 4, I would gladly work 4 10-hour days to have an extra day off. 2-day weekends are too short. They're gone just as soon as you start to feel comfortable. Story 5, working a 5-day work week just makes life seem so much more pointless. By the time I get the other things I need to do, grocery shopping, appointments, etc., done, it's Sunday night. A 4-day work week might give me time to play the piano I bought to combat depression. Edit, thanks for all the love, guys. I really needed it. Story 6, think it makes sense. All the evidence suggests it works, and the welfare benefits would be enormous. Edit, this took off a little more than I expected. Thanks for the cake day well wishes. Whilst I'm here, here's a couple of news stories about the research and articles about 4-day weeks. New Zealand trial, short-term trial by Microsoft. Story 7 also. How do you feel about Opie asking questions that they know for a fact that virtually all Reddit agrees on, but asks anyway for karma and attention? Story 8, they talked about this in the 70s. Yeah, everyone said, my dad did it. He worked 4 12-hour days and took off Friday. Everyone else was like, if I work the 12 hours, the 4 days, plus another 12, I can make even more money, yay. Story 9, given that we now have more people in the workforce and supposedly more productivity because of automation, we ought to be dropping down to 32-hour weeks to compensate for the changes in our household structures. Story 10, I work 4 10s a week instead of the usual 8 5s, and I love it. 2 extra hours each shift is easily worth the 3-day weekend. Feel like I actually get a break from work each week. Story 11, I not only think it would be great, I think we should go further and eliminate required work hours for certain jobs altogether. Most office jobs can easily be done from home with a phone and a working internet connection. There's no reason to force people to commute and sit on a cubicle for hours and hours every week just so bosses can make sure they're working. That's 1919 thinking, not 2019 thinking. When you hire me, you should pay me X amount of dollars for Y amount of work. Whether it takes me 12 hours a week or 54 hours a week to get it done, my salary X never changes, and any free time is my own. Story 12, my work's 4 10s, and it's a total game changer. It's adjusted his schedule, so he wakes up at earlier hours on his days off, which give him more day in his day, on top of already having an extra one. I'm self-employed, and I try to have all my work done by Fridays, so we usually get 3-day weekends together, which also makes taking short trips easier without missing any work. It also opens up a weekday for him to do certain things that have more limited hours on weekends, like appointments and whatnot. Edit, typo. I think it's less about 4-day work weeks, but more about work-life balance for people that's already working more than 10 hours a day, or no pay overtimes, or working during holidays. Working 4 days a week means very little. Story 13, it wouldn't work for me. I work at an animal hospital, open 7 days a week, and there's not enough of us to go around, and the company would never hire enough people to cover for a 4-day work week. Story 14, there are a lot of pitfalls to this. You have to come up with a rotation. You can't expect the world to shut down on Friday, so now you need a weekend crew. Do they only work 3 days, or are you overstaffed on 1 day? The clinic gets a lot more busy because all the people they saw in 5 days are now pushed into 4 days. Also, there are a lot of businesses that rely on people working. The food truck guy, if he can't sell food on the 5th day, he now has a pay cut. The daycare lady, does she continue to charge the same even though your kids are only there for 4 days? Your 15 days of vacation goes from 3 weeks to almost 4. Good for you, bad for the people that cover for you, and not saying that some of these can't be overcome, but just accepting it because a 3-day weekend is awesome won't work either. Story 15, I did 4 10s for a while. I was so exhausted at the end of the 4th day, I basically spent my 5th day recovering. I'm an ITSD, a small company now. I don't see them in a 32-hour weeks for us. Story 16, got all your work done? Yep. We expecting any more to come in today? Nope. Anything else you can help on? Nope. Okay. See you tomorrow. These should be our work days. Story 17, this keeps coming up, and it'll keep getting buried. But I will keep saying it, a 4-day work week should be 4/8s, not 4/10s. For some people, 4/10s is better than 5/8s, and that's fine. But nearly every study on productivity, happiness, flexibility, revenue, etc. that deals with a 4-day work week studies 4/8s, not 4/10s. The entire theory is that 40-hour work weeks are excessive for many modern jobs. Cramming the same hours into fewer days completely misses the point. Story 18, I would do some or all of the following: cook more, play more competitive video games, join a band, play dodgeball, go to the doctor, dentist, once in a while travel out of state more often. Story 19, ID take a 5-day week. Would it be a 4-day school week for children? If so, then I would imagine that adults would love it more as they could spend more time with their kids. Story 20, I absolutely support it. There's so much evidence that backs the benefits up, but agree with the comments about lower paid workers just working more at other jobs. This system is good in theory for salaried workers, but not so much for hourlies, unless their wages were adjusted accordingly. I also think it would affect newer members entering the workforce. It's illegal to roll someone's pay back for doing the same job they've always done, in my country at least. Some conditions may apply, but what's to stop companies from hiring new entry levels at a percentage less? There would have to be regulation and laws against it. Cost of living doesn't go down just because your hours do. Story 21, what management never understands is that they're only getting 4 hours, maybe 6 hours of actual work. Whether they want us there for 8 or 10 hours, they're still only getting minimal production. Personally, I'd rather work 4 4-hour days and get paid for 40 hours. Story 22, hello. 4-day work week haver here. It's wonderful and does have the benefits they say it does. My schedule is Monday, 6 at 12 p. Tuesday through Thursday, 6 is 6 p. Well, I don't get anything but basic self-care done Tuesday through Thursday. I have 3.5 days to unwind, go to appointments, run errands, and do chores. It's magical. I also have a chronic pain condition, so I can take a whole 2 days to rest if I need it and still have a day off in the second half of Monday to get stuff done. 1010. Story 23, I enjoy my 4-day work week. 10 hours a day is a little tiring, but I have no reason to complain. I do the same amount of work, and I get an extra day off. It's worth it. Story 24, I've been dreaming about everyone besides emergency responders, OFC, having Wednesdays consistently off. That would be an absolute dream, and the health benefits of it mentally as well as physically would be well worth it, even to employers, even if they don't try to force their employees to make up for that time by working longer on other days. I believe that in many professions, the profits are lost by giving people another day off midweek would more than pay for themselves in employee satisfaction, loyalty, motivation, and less need for medical leave. I have thoughts on emergency responders and businesses that organize themselves around people having free time too. But yeah, Libby just said that there are very, very few people in the world who truly need to go shopping at 8 p.m. on a Saturday. Story 25, like in 4 days, each 10 hours, maybe depends on how long my commute would be. 4 days with each being 8 hours. I think then I'd just shorten my workday to 6, 25 hours and keep on working 5 days. I mean, a longer weekend is nice, but I'd love to be able to show up at work at 7:30, have a nice lunch break, and still leave at 14:30. Then you'd actually have a life, even on working days. Story 26, I think it's just an advertisement for Microsoft. Hear me out. Most of the articles I've read citing Microsoft Japan as the example of how it works mentions that they obviously use Microsoft applications to make sure they can collaborate quickly to get their work done within 4 days instead of 5. I think this is a very elbow marketing campaign by Microsoft and not an actual case study on work-life balance. Story 27, 4 to 10-hour days is already my ideal schedule. If I could do 4 to 8-hour days with no loss of income, I personally would be more motivated to complete projects and waste less time. Story 28, as a business owner, I have thought about implementing this, but the productivity and scheduling definitely worries me. It's a warehouse, so having it closed for 1 day isn't acceptable, as that means people wouldn't receive their shipments in time. The other thing that worries me is that the extra 2 hours people would be working the remaining days wouldn't be as productive as coming the morning on Friday and starting the day fresh. I feel like 10-hour days would drain a lot of people. I have spoken to a couple employees from other companies who didn't know I had my own business and asked them if they think a 4-day week would make them more productive. They said no, which made me worried that implementing it would make things inefficient for my business. It's the kind of thing where you can't implement it and then roll back without some backlash. Employees' happiness is important to me, but so is the productivity and efficiency of my business. I have seen the study for Japan and Microsoft, but that country in general is very productive, has a completely different work ethic, and Microsoft usually hires top of the top talent. So the demographic seems a bit skewed. Immo, edit grammar. Story 29, everyone in here, saying they'll be happy to stack the 8 hours over the other 4 days. WHLYY, push for that time off. 40-hour work weeks in the postmodern world is so unnecessary for most jobs, as evidenced by half of you dicking around on Reddit at work. Stop wasting Hunan's time. If the job can be done in 3 hours instead of 4, stop punishing people for doing it in 3 FFS. Story 30, I personally would love it. I feel like overall, you get more free time, since on days with work, you have to go to bed early to wake up early, but on weekends you can do whatever. Story 31, only worth it if you can get in writing that you work no more than 10 hours. My last job was supposed to be like that, but they always ran for 12 hours each day. Story 32, I used to have 4-day work weeks for a couple of years. We got a new HR team that ended the 4-day work week to make work easier for themselves. I never got completely used to working 5 days again, and I don't think people realize how insane it is to spend 5 out of 7 days just working. Story 33, not interested. There was a push some time ago to have our department do 4 10-hour days a week. Maybe that works all right for offices, I wouldn't know. But for physical labor, if your whole team isn't giving it their all those extra 2 hours and they might be trying their best, to spend then it's wasted time. Story 34, 4-day work week would be so great. Because where most of my people, and people let me have to work so much after hours, it would actually give us a work day to get after hours work done. I work in IT, and taking down production equipment is very frowned upon. Giving me a Friday to do it changes everything. I'd still probably work the Monday to Friday, or even Monday to Friday once a month would be huge, because working on Saturday or Sunday sucks, and it happens way too often. Story 35, there's many industries that can't function on one less day. Education, for example. If you already do so little work that you could cut out a day and still get all your work done, count yourself lucky and quit complaining. Story 36, I work 5 days, 10-hour shifts. They would just make it 4 days with 13-hour shifts. We would have to totally restructure the corporate stranglehold people have over citizens. In America, at least, don't like your hours or job. Can't just get a new one if you rely on your job for health care. Better hope you don't get in a car accident, get cancer, break a bone, etc. while changing jobs. Insanity. Americans are wage benefit slaves, and no one cares. Yo, I wish. Story 37. I think economists have been predicting it for literally over 100 years, and the only reasons that we still work 40-hour, 5-day-a-week jobs are corporate greed and the obsessive culture of work prevalent in the U.S. and many other Western nations. Story 38. I have worked the whole spectrum, 5/8s for 10s and 3/12s. I will never work 5/8 again, ever. It is torture. I don't know how anyone gets anything done, especially in the United States, where it's such a terrible offense to take a day off. Worked 3/12 for a long time. Being stuck somewhere for 12 hours can be grueling, and I typically lose my focus around hour 7. I also typically spend an entire day recovering from the exhaustion of working for 12 hours straight. I work 4/10s now. I think it offers the most balance. On my 1 weekday off, I feel like it's filled with chores and errands, and I would rather take that time and do something for myself. But it is what it is, and I think I'll just hate working 40 hours a week for the rest of my life no matter what. Story 39. I used to have one at Ford, until my plant got rid of a whole shift. Now I have a 6-day work week, morale is at an all-time low, and I'm going to start looking for a better job. Story 40. We only get one shot at a relatively short life. We humans get to decide how we run our societies. More people spending more time with each other enjoying their lives is a good thing. Story 41. I think it will only benefit the business crowd and not do anything for service or blue-collar workers, and it definitely won't benefit gig economy workers. Story 42. We work 6 days a week. I would be freaking happy to get 2 days weekend. I don't even know how I feel about 4-day work week. It's too far-fetched for me. But I dream, someday, maybe someday. Story 43. I currently work 4 10 to 12-hour shifts, and I love it. Basically, I now have 1 day to do all of the chores running around, and then I can relax for the other 2. Story 44. I worked 4/10s and had Friday through Sunday off during the last recession. It was glorious to still be working and have 3-day weekends. Missed the silly OT though, like 25 to 40 of my checks at times. I survived because my wife got an office job right when that hit, and it was perfect timing. My youngest son went into 1st grade. Story 45 is someone that worked 4 10-hour days for 2 years. It has its ups and downs, but on the days you work, you don't have a life. I also had a 1-hour unpaid lunch with that adding commute, and I barely had time to eat and shower before going to sleep for the next day. That or you sacrifice sleep like I did. Doing that for 2 years, my body broke down, and I felt like absolute for 6 months straight. It took me forever to get any kind of sleep schedule back on track, and to this day, I still have trouble sleeping a decent amount. Add in the fact I really didn't enjoy my job, and really I would say it sucked. Story 46, fewer working hours from each employee would damage businesses and the economy. If you cut down a typical 5-day x 8 hours employee down to 32 hours per week, everyone suffers economically. Businesses would have more overhead costs having to manage more employees on smaller shifts, and the employees would be earning less since they're working fewer hours. That's like firing an employee from 15 of their job. However, compressing those 40 working hours into 4 10-hour working days would work well if it became the norm for all Monday through Friday businesses, which means they would become Monday through Thursday businesses. Employees would actually be happier in their jobs because of the 3-day weekend, literally a 50 bigger weekend, and they'd still earn 40 hours of wage. Businesses that operate through all days of the week would be fine, since they already rotate employees over weekends, would cover shifts, etc. For parents that rely on childcare babysitters, this change would actually be a plus because they already have to pay the childcare from the moment they arrive, meaning that parents are paying for childcare while sitting in traffic earning nothing in return while on their way to and from work. Fewer days means fewer journeys to and from work, and that means a saving on childcare, plus they get longer weekends with their kids, plus that frees the childcare up for an extra day, enabling them to take other jobs and earn more. TLDR, if a 4-day work week is the same number of hours per week, it's a very good thing. Story 47, mixed bag. Sure, working less is great, but we still have to do the same amount of stuff, and we are already always very close to being behind a course. It would create more job openings, and when they're filled, well, not run behind, except that we are running behind because we cannot find qualified people to do the job anyways. And don't even get me started on unqualified workers because that marker is entirely dry ever since Amazon built a warehouse close to us. So ID say nice idea. To create more job openings or when moving to a more automated system. Story 48, people are missing the point. It isn't about going to a 10-hour day. Studies have shown you go to a 4-day work week, 35 hours, and productivity increases. Pay people the same amount. I don't know why you would feel great about it. Story 49, I think that it would seriously help with unemployment and a livable wage because it would require hiring more staff. The question is, would businesses in America staff properly or continue to understaff intentionally to keep overhead down? Story 50, I think it would be a net positive. That said, I'm a municipal employee in a public access government building. I'm not sure that a true 4-day work week would allow us to continue providing the same level of service to citizens. Story 51, done it for the past 6 years as a software engineer in Amsterdam NL. The only reason I'm working 40 hours again is because I'm working 100 remote, so from home most of the time, and I choose my own hours. I would never go back to a normal 40-hour work week again. Story 52, I'd much rather have a 5-day work week with fewer hours. I don't mind going to work 5 days a week. I mind spending nearly all of my waking hours during those days either at work, on my way to, or from work, or recovering from work, and being too exhausted to do anything other than sit around. Story 53, 4-day work week should be standard for mental health purposes, to avoid burnout, and to allow people to actually have time to live their lives with their families, hobbies, instead of existing solely as wage slaves for corporations. Having to fill seats for the sake of the optics of having a warm body there when there isn't any actual work to be done is demoralizing and results in lack of productivity and resentment among workers. Having that extra day to get everything you need done in your life and spend money in the local economy would allow workers the time to refresh and reset. So when Monday rolls around, they're ready to hop back in and be productive. Story 54, we should all be working 2 or 3 days a week. Max. Anything more than that is unreasonable. What's the point of computers and automation and everything else if our lives aren't improved by letting us do more of what we want? Story 55, all for it. I have a long commute to work. I would love to work 4 longer days and commute to work 1 less day. Also trying to work from home more often, but too many meetings is preventing this. Story 56, I like the idea of it, but people in the support industry would not get it. Only the people in programming, factories, and in general the people that make stuff would get this. All the plus side though, as a counselor I would have a better distribution of time. I'd be able to see a lot more people during that 5th day. Right now the adults are too busy working to get into my office to talk about issues. Story 57, I would rather work 10 hours a day, 4 days a week for sure. The weekend is too short. There should be 1 day for chores and getting your life together, one day to do something fun and one day to relax. I think it would greatly reduce burnout and anxiety too. Story 58, I feel that it could be the beginning of something great if spreads worldwide, where the we work to live thing actually happens instead of the we live to work thing. Even if it sinks my chances of retirement, not that they were good in the first place, I still think it is worth it. Story 59, I fully support 4-day work week. 8 or less hours daily. A great majority of people's days are spent filling 8 hours with something. I reduced my actual working time down to 10 hours a week and still got everything done. One week I was ridiculously busy, but still got everything done in under 30 hours. I recognize this isn't the case for everyone, but it would be more efficient and have less pointless meetings with a consistent shorter work week. Story 60, I currently have something similar. I work at Intel. I work 4 days, off 4 days, on 3 days, off 3 days, repeat, 12-hour days. It's great. I'm very well rested and I come to work wanting to work hard and achieve. Story 61, I already barely see sunlight cause of my 8-hour shifts. And being in a groove at 4 p.m. is actually helpful for having longer shifts. ID say that's worth 3-day weekends. However, being in the medical field, I highly doubt my company would ever realistically do this. Story 62 seems like a fine idea. Though as a teacher, I dread what adding 2 extra hours to a school day would be like for myself and my students. I have friends who work in warehousing, and they already have 4-day work weeks for 10-hour days, plus often voluntary overtime on the weekends. It's tough work, but seems like a good job. They enjoy the extra day off. Story 63, honestly, I would prefer 5 days. Maybe it's just because I'm so used to 5-day weeks, but anything more than 2 days away from work and I start to get used to not working, and the next day back is even worse than a normal Monday now feels. Story 64, honestly, it kind of BC, I work at a plant nursery where there needs to be constant supervision of a product line. Even on the weekends and holidays, one of the growers is required to go through the whole nursery to check the plants. We are additionally restricted by certain days based on the activity of other departments, such as shipping or production. So while it might work for people with desk office jobs, a grower would still need to go through the entire establishment for 3 days in a row. That's an immense strain on that person, especially during the summer when plants are in need of more water. Story 65, it's 1 day too many here. Half the people works at Mon, Tuesday, and Wed. Half works at Thursday, Friday, and Sat. Nobody works Sundays there. You're welcome, XD. Story 66, there's a political party in Spain that carried a 4-day work week in its program. Actually, they entered the parliament after yesterday's November 10th Spanish elections. Story 67, I work as management at an Amazon fulfillment center, and we work 12 to 14-hour days, 4 days a week. During peak season in OV-Deck, you work 5 to 6 days a week. The only issue I have with it is our shifts are either Sunday through Wednesday or Wednesday through Saturday, so you're always missing out on one weekend day. Story 68 sounds nice, but I don't see how it will work if society as a whole does not adopt this idea. People want their products yesterday and will buy from another company that works more days. They also want customer service readily available. If it became the standard, would doctors and dentists now only work 4 days a week? Story 69, yeah, I'd rather do 4 10 hours than 5 8 hours. At least I'd get more than 112 to 2 days off a week. Some weeks I don't get off at all, but that's something totally different. Story 70, I work 4 10s on a rotating schedule. Once every 4 weeks my schedule goes MTH then WSA, and I get a 5-day weekend. It's amazing and so nice for planning short trips out of town, or if I just take 2 days of PTO, I get a whole week off. Story 71, I was working 4 10-hour days, then got switched to weekend shift, which is 3 12-hour days, but get paid for 40 hours of 4 days off. Couldn't be happier. Story 72, my wife and I did 4x10 for several months while living in the Northwest USA. It was awesome. We got a lot more work done at work and then had 3-day weekends to explore this new region we had recently moved to. If school was also a 4-day week, I can only imagine how it would impact families. They could actually have big adventures all the time. Further, if not everyone works the same days and has the same days off, it makes destinations like the zoo, theme parks, natural attractions so much more enjoyable because you split up the visitor group over more days. If some people work MTH and some people work TF, the M and F visitors to those locations will be great. Heck, why is there even a weekend anymore? I'd work FM and have TTH off, and there be no one at those destinations. No lines of the roller coasters. No one blocking my pictures of the amazing waterfalls. No masses of people standing around watching a giraffe on a wall. I'm very pro 4-day work week. Even if it's 4x10, 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., break for an hour lunch, 1 p.m. to 7 p.m., head out for dinner. Story 73. I did 3 12-hour shifts a week, and it was my favorite. I had 4 days off a week that I could fill with other shifts, but it didn't make my work week excruciatingly long. Story 74 depends on the variables involved. In most of my jobs, a 4 or 5 day 30-hour work week is enough time to get things done outside of probably 6 different weeks a year, which would require more time. But because of old norms, we were stuck in 5-day 40-hour weeks, where in reality, we were wasting multiple hours a day. Of course, not all jobs have that luxury, but quite a few can be consolidated to that level. Personally, I work better knowing if I go all out for 4 hours straight, then I'm done. Story 75. This would definitely make me altogether happier and less stressed. Plus, I would have more time to spend with my fiance on our days off. Also, I think more time to refresh before coming back to work will make employees more productive at work. I see this as an absolute win. Story 76 sounds nice in practice, but in reality, I'm not sure what it would solve. I feel like people would spend more money, as a lot of people don't know how to not spend money in their free time, and a livable wage will need to increase. Also, it would be great for those who are salaried, but I don't see how retail restaurant workers would benefit, as they would likely have to work more hours. Story 77. I don't think it works too well for construction, mainly civil and infrastructure projects. These projects are mainly output-driven and tend via a huge factor. You might get a marginal amount of focus, and maybe you get a couple of hours better off from a tired end of week, but ultimately 4 days a week means for every week of a project, it's going to take a day longer to reach the end. Story 78. I would take a 5,000 decrease in pay to work a 4-day work week. It would be much harder to pay my bills, but my stress would go down, and I could spend more time with my wife. Story 79. In my field, I need to have 5 days to be effective in my role. I would be more down with a 35-hour work week rather than taking a whole day. When I do take breaks or days off, I feel super behind. I also recognize that my efficiency dips around hour 6, 5, so a shorter work week hour-wise would be better than subtracting a whole day. Story 80. I get paid by the hour. As much as I do like the extra time to do personal stuff, I'm greedy. I want less hours. Besides, what use is the extra time if I just sit on my all day, because I can't afford to do anything in that time? Not only will I lose money, I will spend more money to kill the time. 4-day week just doesn't work for me unless my wages go up to compensate, which they want. Story 81. I work Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, 10 hours per day. I have to get up at 2 a.m. to get in on time. I have no weekend or anything resembling a weekend. I can't sleep in on my days off because I have to get to bed early. I'm too tired to stay up late on the days I work. It absolutely sucks, but my only other option is working 6 days Sunday off, 8 hours per day. I can't risk changing careers at 50 years old. Story 82. We are still working under the same hours and regiment as during the Industrial Revolution to support wartime. We're not in a world war where our citizens need to work 40 hours a week as a means of keeping our sovereignty and supporting our military. The fact that we work any more than 20 hours more than 3 days a week is insane. It's solely because of greed and not at all because of necessity. Reducing work weeks would create more jobs and stimulate the economy, because people will have more time to enjoy the fruits of their labor. Story 83. Why, despite technological innovations, do we work just as hard and just as long at stagnant wages for the rich to profit more than they ever did before we need a 4-day work week, and to get rid of this 40-hour schedule that is slowly killing everyone? Story 84. Do I get paid the same as a 5-day work week? No. Then it's stupid. I barely make enough to survive nicely as is. For days of 10 hours would be awesome, though, so still getting 40-hour WW minimum. Story 85. After I got diagnosed with a disability, my work offered to let me work 10-hour days so I could take 1 day off to rest or schedule DR appointments. It works out really well for me, generally speaking, but it's so exhausting. I do enjoy not taking time away from PTO to attend appointments, but 10 hours is a lot, especially with a disability. That's just my experience with having a 4-day week in which I have to make up the missing shift as opposed to it being the standard. Story 86. It really should be the thing. I think we as humans are scared to traverse this mental enslavement of a 5-day week. At the very least, we should have a mandatory remote working day. Does anyone think this could happen? Story 87. As a casual employee, I usually work 4-day weeks. It's great. I have a day to catch up on chores, groceries, and 2 to actually enjoy life. That being said, it's only feasible being child-free. I wouldn't be able to afford the shorter week if I had dependents. Story 88. In most states, overtime is paid by the day. So if you want to do 4 10-hour days, then you would have 2 hours of overtime each day. This is where overregulation hurts businesses. I owned a company and wanted to offer this, but I couldn't. My employees also didn't qualify as salaried, so I had to worry about overtime since they had to be hourly. Story 89. That I want to make more money, I currently work a 4-day work week. Mon, Thursday, 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. I haven't been more comfortable with the position schedule. Just when it feels like you've been off for too long and it feels like you're missing work, you're starting up your work week the next day. Just when you think you can't take another day of the job, boom, your weekend starts when you think you'd have one more day to go. All in all, it's a very positive schedule for me. Sorry for formatting on mobile. Story 90, we need it as a culture. And not just one less day, but less hours for 10 sucks, which, yes, will mean either that we should get paid more per hour, fuck off, my boss, or that the big expenditures need to go down like rent, monthly auto school detect, or, we vote for Andrew Yang next year. Story 91, a healthy work-life balance with time to spend with family and friends, or chasing life's enjoyable pursuits, or just catching up on yard work. Fall leaves is essential to having a happy life. Contentment, or happiness, is really the greatest goal of everyone in life. So any societal change that can help towards that should be accepted with open arms. Story 92, I currently work a 4-day work week. It may sound weird, but I feel like I can enjoy my work a lot more by being able to get away from it for 3 days out of the week. Feels good. Story 93, my employer uses 2 different systems for different parts of our office. Personally, myself and a lot of our crews work 4-day work weeks, but still 40 hours, so it's 4 10-hour days, 6 a.m. to 4 to 4:30 p.m. The rest of the offices works 9 hours days, with every other Friday as an 8-hour day, which is also casual. So everyone still works 40-hour weeks essentially. Having a 3-day weekend every week actually makes me feel like I'm getting a real break from work and can shift my focus to my life. Having a 4-day work week makes the week feel less dragging. Wednesday post-work no longer feels like midweek. It feels like the end of the week, and by the time I run all my errands on my off Friday, I still have an entire weekend to do what I please. All in all, even with the longer days, I love having a 4-day work week. I think it's great for employee morale and makes me spend my time at work better instead of just ticking off the hours until I get to leave.